Hello, I'm Paul Harris, the America's editor for Mining Journal, and welcome to this Idaho CEO Roundtable, where over the next hour or so, we'll be talking about Idaho as a destination for mining investment and some of the companies operating there, as well as some of the general trends in the mining space. And to do so, we have a high-powered panel with an incredible depth of experience in operating junior exploration companies and precious metals mining companies, which have successfully bought and sold companies and projects over the years, in addition to raising significant sums in the capital markets. Idaho has silver operations that have been in operation continuously for more than 100 years through dozens of cycles, so mining in Idaho is nothing new. The state has drawn some of the best names in the industry to work there, as you will see, and we will find out why. So joining me today, we have, in no particular order, Phillips Baker, President and CEO of Hecla Mining; Hugh Agro, President and CEO of Revival Gold; Cal Everett, President and CEO of Liberty Gold; George Salamis, President and CEO of Integra Resources; Laurel, President and CEO of Perpetua Resources, until recently known as Midas Gold; Darren Blasutti, President and CEO of America's Gold and Silver; and Ben Davenport, President of the Idaho Mining Association. We'd like to encourage questions from the people listening into the webinar, so please use the Q&A tool at the bottom if you would like to ask any questions, and we'll try to get those as we go through the event. Now, I'd like to start by giving each of our panelists 2 minutes to give a high-level overview of their organization. So let's go through the list as we did just a moment ago, and let's start with Phillips Baker, please. Please turn on your microphone. There we go.
Thanks. It's great to be here. Hecla Mining Company, I'm sure most of you know the company. We're a 130-year-old mining company. We are the largest silver producer in the United States. We produce roughly 30% of all the silver that it's produced in the country. We've been known as a silver miner for our whole existence, but we also produce other metals. For the last 50 years, we've produced gold. We have gold operations in Canada. We have gold properties in Nevada. We also have a sort of a split gold silver property in Mexico, San Sebastian. We are glad to be on this panel and glad to have the opportunity to highlight the strength of operating in Idaho. It's quickly becoming recognized as one of the best jurisdictions to be operating in. With that, Paul, I'll turn it over.
Thank you very much, Phillips. Hugh, your 2 minutes, please.
Thank you, Paul, for organizing. Great to be part of this panel of distinguished experts in the field. Revival Gold is advancing the Bear Track Arnett Gold Project. It is the largest past producing gold project in the state of Idaho. And the project is pure gold, so no byproduct credits or equivalent ounces. We benefit from infrastructure, including roads, power to site, and an operating ADR facility on the site. And over the past 4 years, we've grown the resource from nil to now 3 million ounces of gold at a finding cost of less than $5 an ounce. That's testament to the capability of the team, but also the quality of the project, where the deposit's open in all directions. We've completed a PEA on the first phase to restart the heap leach operation at a meaningful 72,000 ounces a year, and we're working to continue to expand the resource. We've hit on every drill hole to date on the Bear Track system, which extends now over 5 kilometers of strike. And the deposit's open at the south, open at the north, and open at depth, where we've intersected upwards of holes up to 9.8 meters of 71 grams per ton at 450 meters depth. Idaho is an exciting place to be, and we're thrilled to be part of this group and to be progressing the project back towards production and continued growth in a stable jurisdiction. Thanks for having us, Paul, and welcome to be a part of this event.
Thank you very much, Hugh. And now, Cal, your 2 minutes.
Thanks. Pleasure to be here. Liberty Gold is pretty much total company focused on Carlin-style oxide sedimentary hosted gold systems in the Great Basin area of the United States. And our core project, of course, is the Black Pine project in southern Idaho. And we also have a second deposit that's in southwest Utah. We purchased this project at the recommendation of our VPX, who's quite well known, Moira Smith, in 2016 for an aggregate of $1 million. And it was their geological team's interpretation that this wasn't 5 little pits. It was actually one large district scale oxide gold system. And in 2 years of drilling it, now we've conclusively proven that the oxide system actually spreads over 14 square kilometers. And that's not an exaggeration. We're hitting on every single drill hole we're doing. And right now we're permitted to drill 11.9 square kilometers of that ground. And when the team took on this project, they gave it a new geological look, and they weren't covered by money as the previous operator was in the 1990s. They drilled deeper. And the discovery hole was the very first hole, and it hit 48 meters of 1.78 grams oxide gold, which is a multiple of what's being mined in the Great Basin right now. And then the project just pyramided out from there. And so we'll start drilling it again in another 3 weeks. The budget is highly elevated this year for the state of Idaho. We'll put in about $20 million US into the project. We'll double shift our drills, so we'll have the equivalent of 7 drills operating for the rest of the year. And the objective of this is to take the company through a maiden resource, which we're internally projecting of good oxide ounces would approach approximately 2 million ounces of gold, and it could be higher, it could be lower than that. The maiden resource is pending in another, I would say, 2.5 months when they get all the assays in. So it's really taking a scale here, and we look forward to updating everybody on it.
Thank you very much, Cal. I think that's an interesting point about understanding the system to unlocking the value. And I think that's equally true of some of the results, the news releases Hugh at Revival Gold has put out recently. And that was something that was highlighted this week. This is PDAC week. BHP's head of Chief Technology Officer was talking about the importance of understanding the system to be able to find the mineral deposits. And for her, she said the golden days of exploration are yet to come. Okay, that's me waffling on. George, your 2 minutes, please.
Thanks, Paul, and great idea putting this together. And you know, you've always been a very strong supporter of Idaho, and you know, we all appreciate it, obviously. So Integra Resources spun out essentially of the sale of Integra Gold a couple of years ago, and I promise that might be the last time I mention Integra Gold, at least today. But Integra Resources, essentially what we are, advanced explorer, junior gold and silver project developer situated in southwestern Idaho. We acquired this project, Delamar, a couple of years back from Kinross Gold, and it was a great project back in the day, produced very successfully for Kinross up until the year 2000, and it was shut down, not due to exhausted resources or reserves, but really shut down because of the prevailing gold price at the time, gold and silver prices. So we're essentially picking up from where Kinross left off. Now, there are 2 components to these gold systems. There's a bulk tonnage low grade system there, and underneath there's a high grade system. And that's kind of characteristic to a lot of these low sulfidation epithermal deposits that sit in this part of Idaho. So right now we're putting together a pre-feasibility study on the bulk tonnage low grade, but at some point that high grade will start to become more prominent. In terms of what the economics could look like on this project, the PEA that we did a couple of years back was showing some pretty strong economics for a project that would only cost about $160 million US to build, and would have a base load of production of about 125,000 ounces of gold equivalent. What we're guiding on in the upcoming pre-feasibility study, which is going to be delivered at the end of this year or the 4th quarter, is something much more than that. So kind of stay tuned for that. And in addition to that, you know, over the course of the last couple of years, common theme amongst you know, everybody here who's advancing an asset, you know, we've had a rethink of the geology. Rather than, you know, when we acquired this project, it was a bunch of disparate gold deposits that we've since tied all together. We've got a very large land package, and there's some connections and patterns to these things that we're seeing. So stay tuned for exploration results, resource estimate by mid-year, and towards the end of the year, a pre-feasibility study.
Thank you very much, George. Laurel, 2 minutes for you, please.
You bet. Thank you, and thanks for letting us be part of this panel today. So Perpetua Resources is a project in central Idaho above Yellow Pine, but we are located in an abandoned mining area, a brownfield. So we will be developing, we've just finished launching our feasibility study. Our draft EIS has concluded in the fall of last year, and we're on to progressing through the NEPA permitting process. We will be developing and operating one of the highest grade open pit gold mines in the country, provide also the United States with a source of the critical mineral antimony. And as we're doing that, we're also going to be restoring an abandoned mining field. So we have a lot of work out there to do, but we are excited about how far we are along in the process. Our company also believes strongly that industry and the environment can work together to restore our site, to improve the economy of a rural community, and also be able to attract a diverse workforce. As you mentioned, yes, we did change our name from Midas Gold, and we changed it to Perpetua Resources to reflect who we are and what we do, and our renewed focus as we now our headquarters is located in Boise, Idaho. So as we take this abandoned mining site, we restore a river, improve water quality, source a critical mineral, become one of the largest gold producers in the country. Those are our goals to this unique opportunity. This year, we're hoping to meet the milestones ahead of us as we advance into a final EIS, draft record of decision, and hopefully get to our final record of decision by the end of the year.
Thank you, Laurel. I think that's interesting. You know, in a short period of time, Idaho could have the largest silver producer and the largest gold producer. That would be quite a feather in the cap for the state. Now, Darren, your 2 minutes, please.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks to everybody for organizing. You know, we're a gold and silver producer. We've got a gold mine in Nevada ramping up to full production this year. We've got a Mexican silver mine, but what's actually created the most interest in our stock has been the old Galena Mine complex, which we have in the Silver Valley in Idaho. And that complex has been operating in some capacity since 1887. And its modern mining actually started in 1947. So we've been there. It's been there a long time. The complex was made up of three main producing mines: the Coeur, the Galena, and the Caladay. And those mines have produced over 250 million ounces of silver and 550 million ounces of silver equivalent. We have two mills. We create a silver copper con and a silver lead con. We have 1,500 tons of capacity. Unfortunately for the company, we bought the property at the end of 2012 when silver was 35, and we wrote it down to $15 an ounce, and it was a very difficult time. But I could tell you, working in Idaho, we were able to work with the unions to basically downsize, basically have the workforce to keep the mine operating and open. We had lots of support from the government and the governor to restructure with the unions. And we went through this 10-year downturn in the silver price, and the complex in 2019, we sold 40% of it to Eric Sprott to recapitalize the mine, provided much needed exploration drilling. And interestingly, all these junior companies that we've talked about here that are drilling, the story at Galena is about drilling, and we have taken the total silver mineral inventory from 58 million ounces in 2018, and we expect this June to be at over 200 million ounces of silver in all three categories. And I think the belief beyond that between Eric and ourselves is the mine will get to 400 to 500 million ounces of silver at depth. And so it's a bit of a revitalization of a mine that has had its struggles. It hasn't had the great oversight and balance sheet that's perhaps Hecla's had, being such an old company. So it was really a difficult process, but these resource ounces that we've drilled will drive production to over 2 million ounces by the end of 2022 and over 5 million ounces by 2025. So we're not going to quite catch Lucky Friday, but we're going to get to 5 million ounces, we believe, in 2025. And it's really exciting for a mine that was literally on the brink of closing down at the end of 2018.
Thank you, Darren. And finally, Ben, please.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having us, Paul. No one is more excited to have this highlight on Idaho than me, as the representative of the industry group here in the state. My name is Ben Davenport, Executive Vice President of the Idaho Mining Association. This association has been in existence since 1903. I think Hecla may be the only founding member on this call, but certainly all of these guys and groups are major supporters of industry here in Idaho. So glad to be here and glad to see all of your faces. I haven't seen most of you for almost a year now, so it's good to see all of you again. I've been with the association for about 5 years. It's been an exciting time to be part of this group. We've seen a lot of growth in our exploration side of the business, particularly gold, as you probably note from this panel here. From my perspective, there are few places in the world left like Idaho, and I certainly hope we stay this way for some time, even with the growth we've been seeing over the last few years. Idaho has a rich history in mining. Our state was essentially founded on it, and it has remained an economic driver for the state and an important industry throughout our statehood. So, this industry, multi-generational industries, created wonderful opportunities for companies that are already operating here, as well as those who are looking at Idaho for the next project. As these guys have already said, we've got a lot of brownfield sites with the infrastructure in place, and there's also potential for some of these untapped greenfield expansion projects as well. We have a wealth of different minerals here in Idaho. It's a great place to poke around for precious and non-precious metals. We've got some critical and strategic minerals that'll certainly help shore up supply chains to contribute to our world's goals on EV and green energy solutions that we're looking for. In Idaho, we've also, on top of all of this, we've got what I consider political leadership and at the legislative level and administrative level that have shown their desire to keep Idaho's regulatory burden low and make Idaho a great place to do business. Certainly hope to hear from some of the other panelists on this point. But, we've been working really hard at IMA to get our initiatives heard and pass through the legislative process and the administrative process. And so far, knock on wood, I guess, we've been very successful and had tremendous support from our partners in government. Certainly, there's still some issues to tackle, and we're open to these discussions. If any of the work needs to be done on regulatory front, we're open to those discussions, and we don't feel like we've had significant pushback from the policymakers. This isn't to say that some in the bureaucratic structure can't use a little prodding to come along from time to time, but we work hard there as well. And most folks in the policy world in Idaho still have an open door policy. Like I said, there's very few places left like Idaho. The access to our political leaders, the access to our agency heads is unparalleled in my experience. And it's become expected to those of us who work here and who have lived here our whole lives. This type of access leads to face-to-face conversations, genuine discussions, where we believe that some of these hard issues and hard projects can be accomplished. So, at IMA, similarly, we've got an open door policy to government and to other industry members, whether they're members of the association or not. If you've got a problem with Idaho government or Idaho policy, let's talk about it, and let's talk about how we can fix it, or at the very least make it workable for you or your projects.
Thanks very much, Ben. I'd like to sort of, kick off the conversation. Let's continue that theme. Ben's given an overview from the IMA, the Idaho Mining Association's point of view about the regulatory system, access to the people that count. What do our other panelists think? The people from the companies that actually have to, get things permitted and have those relationships. What is it about the political regulatory makeup of Idaho that you think makes it an attractive place to develop mining projects? Let's perhaps start with Phillips. You're a mine operator. What is it about Idaho from the regulatory political point of view that's attractive? Hello,
You're on mute.
Yeah, after 130 years of being here, we've seen the regulatory environment change dramatically. And I guess the way I would characterize it is, it's the changes that occur. Some are driven by the state, some are driven by federal mandates. But in all cases, we have a regulatory system that it allows that evolution to occur while encouraging solutions. Just invariably, when we have something difficult that we have to deal with, we get to the outcome that we need from a regulatory standpoint. But the states, the regulatory environment is one where we identify ways to get to a solution rather than just shutting things down. So that's how I would characterize it, as a place where it's solutions based.
Okay, I mean that obviously is important. Looking at what the end goal is, how to make it happen. I want to sort of perhaps direct this question now to either Cal or Hugh. You've both recently had received permission to expand your drilling areas. How was that process? Let's start with Cal, because I think you announced it first.
It's a standard process because you're dealing with government agencies. So at Black Pine, we deal with two agencies. We deal with Forest Services, and we also deal with the Bureau of Land Management. And so it's a set protocol, which really hasn't changed, I think, for a long time in the United States. If you have to follow a sequence of events to get not an NOI, but a plan of operations, which allows you to do your work. And so you have to go clear the ground that you want to work on, archaeologically and biologically, and you have to do other surveys, and you use independent engineering firms. And that takes approximately, I'm going to say, 18 months to 2 years to get a major permit. And as part of that permit obligation, they're going to give you what you need to, the land that you can disturb, and also you have to guarantee, and we all of us do this, we reclaim what we disturb as we move forward with all of these projects. So we went through the permit process for the second plan of operations at Black Pine, and that went without a problem at all. There were no protests to the permit, and it was really smooth sailing, but it does take that amount of time, and that's part of it, and you just have to get used to it when you're working in the Great Basin. Now we're looking at preparing our third plan of operations, starting that work, and that would be an extension of the existing plan, but this is for the location of infrastructure for our mine at Black Pine. So again, you have to redo the same steps every single time, but you have to do it in a methodical fashion. And it actually was a fairly easy process for us to deal with.
Okay, thank you, Cal. Now, the state capital is Boise, and has been one of the fastest growing cities in the US in recent years, benefiting very much from the tech exodus from San Francisco. Yet much of Idaho is a rural economy that misses out on what is happening in Boise. So what would you see as the potential for mining to make a positive impact in rural Idaho? And I'd like to start that with Hugh, please, because you recently put out a press release about an economic study that you did very much looking at this issue. You're on mute, Hugh.
Yes, Idaho is one of the fastest growing states in the United States, and that's really benefiting the urban centers. But in the rural parts of Idaho, for example, where we're located, Lemhi County, with a population of 8,000 people, it doesn't move out to those locations. In Lemhi County, average wage is about $38,000 a year, which is well below the national average of about $60,000 a year and the state average of about $53,000 a year. When Beartrack Arnett was in operation back in early 2000, there were 250 jobs. And today those jobs are worth $100,000 a year of comp. So you can see that a mining operation, a responsibly run mining operation, can have a big economic and social impact in a part of the world that really can benefit from that. And for that reason, ourselves and other operators in the state in these rural counties are very much welcome.
Thank you, Hugh. Now, Revival Gold, Beartrack Arnett, you're pretty much in the sort of the middle part of the state. George, you're in the southwest corner. Is that a similar experience for you down in that part of the state?
Yes, yeah, I would echo a lot of what Hugh said. In terms of where we are located in Owyhee County, I believe by area, I think it's got to be top 5 in terms of size, county-wise. It runs pretty much the length of Idaho, yet it only has a population of about 11,500 people. So it's you know, the population base is spread out. And so in terms of what we're forecasting for the mine to be built at Delamar, 330 odd jobs is what it's going to create, not to mention the sort of the rule of thumb typically is for every on-site job, 3 to 4 spin-off employment opportunities are created through that. So it'll be a tremendous driver for the county and for the state. And, you know, at the sort of state and federal level, we're estimating about $200 million odd in taxes to be generated both for the state and federally. So a huge driver, you know, not only for the county, but for the state.
Thank you, George. Laurel, your Perpetua is probably going to be the next company to build a mine in Idaho, and you're getting close to that process of starting to sort of really ramp up, employing more people. What kind of impact do you see around the stibnite operation? You're on mute.
I wasn't going to do that too. I agree with Hugh and George about rural Idaho needing jobs. What we have found is our rural communities that we're working with, they want jobs, yes, and we will bring 500 plus jobs into the area, but they also want jobs that are going to keep their next generation home so that they don't have to move to Boise or they don't have to move outside of Idaho, to keep them here with good wages and transferable skills, things that they can use to help this younger generation develop and train. So mining and secondary businesses that will grow around mining offer these opportunities. Our rural communities also need infrastructure, and boy, have we discovered that with COVID and the pandemic. They need roads, they need power lines, they need upgrades, they need fiber connectivity, and that's what we bring. We bring a partnership that can help make that happen. And then if you're in a brownfield like our project is, restoration, we are going to be restoring the area and providing opportunities as we mine and helping improve the water quality and the natural resources. So I think this industry brings a lot to the rural communities of Idaho.
Thank you very much, Laurel. Now, all of this wouldn't happen without the geology. I mean, geology is very much the starting point. Idaho is just to the north of Nevada, and when it comes to precious metals exploration, many people don't look past Nevada. So why should people pay attention to Idaho from a geological point of view? And Carol, let's start with you. I mean, you're talking about the Great Basin. What's this geological opportunity in Idaho?
Well, it's kind of broad brush in Idaho. Idaho's kind of a unique state because it's at the crossroads of multiple metals that could be mined. It could be industrial, it could be base metals, it could be precious metals. And the ages of those deposits can vary in age from Precambrian age to Miocene age. And what a lot of people don't understand or haven't recognized is that southern Idaho is the same geology as is western Utah, as is Nevada. And the Carlin-style deposits that made Nevada famous actually occur in southern Idaho. And But there's a herd mentality to the exploration and development business. Everybody went to Nevada, and our exploration team likes to think off the grid. And so that resulted in the discovery of the Long Canyon Mine in Western, off-trend in Western Nevada in 2000. It was sold to Newmont in 2011. They went into Black Pine, recognized the same type oxide system. They went to Southwest Utah and found another oxide system. So we tend to go away from the herd and just be left alone and do our own things.
Thank you, Cal. Let me sort of put that question to Phillips as well. Cal's very much in the southeastern part of the state. Phillips with Hecla's Lucky Friday, you're right up in the north. What's the geological situation there that makes it attractive?
Paul, where the Lucky Friday is located in the Galena is what's known as the Silver Valley. It's a district that has produced 1.4 billion ounces of silver, and as Darren has indicated, their resource base is growing as is ours. So it's a silver based with other base metals, lead, zinc, copper, all are in the Silver Valley of Idaho. So it's a whole great district to be in.
So you're in the right address. I mean, literally, Silver Valley, you're in the right address. Okay. Now, the world is increasingly focused on decarbonization and energy matrix. Again, another big theme at PDAC this week was full value mining, the ability to extract everything that's worthwhile in a deposit, identifying it and being able to extract it. Idaho also has cobalt amongst its mineral suite. So what opportunities do you think Idaho provides in this context of decarbonization, energy matrix, that potentially makes a project in Idaho more attractive than a project somewhere else? Let me direct that question to Laurel. Again, you're about to hopefully bring a new mine into production. What's your opportunity from that point of view?
I think that this project has a great contribution to that. Idaho already has one of the lowest, if not the lowest, carbon source energy grids in the nation. And producing minerals here in Idaho can benefit from the very start by using our low cost, low emissions energy grid. Projects being designed today, like we are in the process of designing, can accommodate and build in carbon reduction practices. And then we will be mining antimony, and our gold, this valuable byproduct, antimony, fits right into the ESG and mining and supply chain conversations that are going, because not only is it used in munitions for national defense, a flame retardant, but it's also used in wind and hydro turbines, solar panels, large storage batteries, and semiconductors. So we think that as far as ESG is elevated in the US, and it should be, I think we have a great opportunity here in Idaho to contribute to that and to shout it out as to what we can provide on that scale.
Thank you very much, Laura. And Darren, I'd like to direct the same question to you. Silver is another one of the metals that's seen as part of the decarbonization, low carbon future. To what extent is it an advantage for you that your silver production can benefit from this low carbon power matrix in Idaho?
Well, I think the first thing is, the Silver Valley is underground, so by definition, your power requirements are much less. What you're actually expending to get the ore out is pretty low to start with. Not just the great grid we've got, but also we're not burning diesel. We're looking at, much like Hecla is getting underground and more electric instead of diesel. You're trying to bring those things on. But I think the where the world is going is going to be great for a lot of the metals in Idaho. I think silver, I mean, if you read a Hecla presentation, it's telling you all the great things where silver's going, how it's making a difference in solar panels, how it's making a difference in electric cars. I think copper. We're talking, and we have all of those byproducts in our mines, and along with the silver. And so we're fundamentally more bullish on silver than we are on gold. And when you couple that with Idaho, we talked earlier a little bit about the makeup of the state. You've got the state with the best policy ranked by Fraser Institute just recently in 2020, so the best policy. You've got at the top of the leadership scale, whether it was Butch before or Brad now, a leadership at the governor level that wants to basically have investment in mining. And then the third part is you've actually got the groups inside the Idaho government that are actually staffed up. When you talk about Nevada, we're trying to get a mine phase 2 permit in Nevada. Everybody talks about how great it is. Well, the local provincial or state offices don't have enough people in there and they can't get through the projects. And so Idaho brings all three of those things together: the great policy, the support at the top, and the state people that are prepared to help you move your project forward. And you've got the required minerals coming out of the ground that are going to support that decarbonization policy. So I think, Idaho couldn't be stronger. I mean, a lot of us have worked. I've been in 4 continents, 27 countries, and with Barrick and with USA. And, Idaho by far is the strongest on all of the scales with which we just need a few more wins on Hugh and Laurel and Cal and George's projects getting permitted and going. And if you get that, I don't think there's anything stopping Idaho. It's got all the ingredients.
Thank you very much, Darren. Let's sort of build on that. As you mentioned, Perpetua, we've mentioned a couple of times, Perpetua is in the permitting process. It's almost through that. So how, from a practical point of view, building on Darren's comments, how does the permitting process in Idaho compare to other places? And I think Phillips mentioned at the start that, there's very much an attitude in Idaho and amongst the state agencies of, how do we get to a yes, rather than looking for reasons to block a project. What's your experience been, Laurel?
Yes, we've hit some major milestones in the last 6 months. With our draft EIS out and our ROD hopefully out later this year. I think the 3 biggest pieces of advice about permitting in Idaho, and some of them I wished I would have known at the beginning rather than learned in the middle of this where we are. But one is that I think we've been very successful with is start your conversations early with communities, be a part of your community, listen and be transparent. At first, some may not want mining to be part of their community, but building trust takes time, and you just stick with it and be transparent in who you are. 2, be smart from the start with your regulators. Tell your story to all levels of government, build relationships before you need something from them, have them be very familiar with your project that way. And then, as others have mentioned, you really need to respect the process. The NEPA process takes time, and it's long and it's frustrating and it's bureaucratic, but I have seen our project improve with it. As we went through scoping and we implemented some things. We went through the draft EIS process and the comments that are coming back and how we're implementing some of those. Our project is better than the original plan right now. And I'm sure as we work through the final EIS and the draft ROD, it's going to improve even more. I can't speak to how this compares with Nevada's permitting process, but the vast majority of the projects in Idaho will have a federal agency lead. But we have had the opportunity to initiate the joint review process where the state and the federal agencies can coordinate together with the Office of Energy and Mineral Resources, and they act as an overall coordinator for state agencies involved in the process, and that has been extremely valuable for us as well.
Thank you, Laura. Let's bring Ben in on that point. How important is it for the governor's office to coordinate the state agencies so that people are hopefully moving in the same direction, or hopefully moving in the same sort of timeline? I imagine that's been a key part of IMA's mandate to create that environment where that happens.
Yeah, no, I guess to build on what Laura was saying, the Office of Energy and Mineral Resources has played a large role in coordinating agency comments. and helping some of these folks navigate the permitting process and bringing all agencies to the table and holding them accountable and on a timeline. This has been extremely helpful for me and from IMA's perspective because it provides, that one throat to choke, if you will. When we need answers or engagement from multiple agencies in the state or the federal government, we can go to OEMR and have them do some of the legwork to bring others to the table. That doesn't mean we're always going to like what we hear at the onset. But to your question, that office was set up to find a way to yes, and not just point out all the reasons why a project should not go forward or why we can't get something done. There's some work to do on the joint review process to dust it off and modernize it a little bit, and to make sure all of the federal government and the federal offices as well as our state offices still share the same goals. But the governor's office through OEMR has taken a lead role in trying to bring everybody to the table and keep the ball moving forward on some of these projects. If it's needed and if you're wanting to engage OEMR, then they're there to help.
Thank you, Ben. A can-do attitude amongst the authorities and regulators is, I would say, one of the key success factors of any successful mining jurisdiction around the world. Now, I imagine many of the gold juniors and many of the other people on this panel have been looking on with interest at the progress of Perpetua through the permitting cycle or system. What do you think you have learnt watching what's happened at Perpetua that you'll perhaps look to apply in your respective permitting processes in the future? And George, if I may sort of direct that to you first, please.
Sure. So not only are we watching closely what the great work that Laurel and Perpetua are doing, but it's a question that literally comes up in every investment call that we have, Paul. What's going on up at Stibnite? How does that relate to what's going to happen in terms of getting fully permitted at Delamar? So it's something we watch quite closely. In terms of lessons learned, I think, as Laurel mentioned earlier, I think one of the really key elements is, engage with your stakeholders early, as early as possible. And we've actually started that. In terms of the NEPA process, which really hasn't officially kicked off for us, but will soon, because that step comes when we finish the pre-feasibility study and we submit our plan of operations. That's when the official permitting process starts. That said, we've engaged with the Bureau of Land Management, which is the lead federal organization that we're going to be dealing with, and we engage with them early. And in fact, there's a BLM person who's handling our file now as we speak. So we've basically we started rolling on the permitting process. I think as well, the lessons learned from what Laurel and Perpetua have done, just be as transparent as possible with all of your stakeholders. Just tell them at all points, everything that you're doing, and bring them in as early as possible. And I found these same things, these same techniques have worked in other projects in other parts of the world that I've dealt in. And you cannot start stakeholder engagement early enough. And I've seen that before, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Thank you, George. I'd like to sort of turn the question to Hugh. In your PEA, you've got the company's going to have a two-phase approach, a relatively straightforward open pit heap leach operation as a phase one, and then potentially a much larger mill project as a phase two. Again, what are your takeaways from observing the Perpetua process? And you're on a brownfield site as well. I mean, to what extent is that an advantage when it comes to permitting?
Well, first I'll say Perpetua, Steve Quinn, and now Laurel have set the bar high, have done an outstanding job, and we really commend them for their efforts. And like George, most of the people on this, all of the people on this call have worked in multiple jurisdictions around the world in modern, responsible exploration and mining, and there's nothing that that we've not seen elsewhere in the world that doesn't come to play in Idaho around stakeholder relations and making these projects a win-win for all concerned. There's the multiplier effect that George talked about. There's the jobs in these rural areas that Laurel and Cal and I have talked about. And there's, this multi-generational skill development that, that Phillips and Darren have talked about. And these things come to play. And the lesson really is, number one, do right by the community, do right by the state, do right by the people you're working with, and do right by society. I mean, the bottom line is we need minerals to fuel our modern way of life. And we can ignore the fact that we need these minerals. We can ignore the fact that we need a strong financial system that's backed by gold, but that's at our peril.
Thank you, Hugh. Laurel mentioned, Idaho has some environmental challenges related to past mining operations. There's lead and zinc tailings, Superfund sites in the state. To what extent do you see this as a challenge or an opportunity as a developer? And Laurel, let me start that one with you, please.
Well, these challenges are opportunities. The environment and industry win together if we can remine brownfields, and we should absolutely prioritize mineral production in these areas that are already disturbed and could benefit from modern restoration standards. The country needs a solution to abandoned mines, and industry can and we should be a part of those solutions. Industry brings the know-how and the financial resources and the workforce to restore these lands and these rivers that improve water quality and habitat, and we just need permission and a clear path. So our recent agreement with EPA and the Forest Service outlines that path forward. The biggest roadblock to abandoned mine cleanup has been a question of liability. And there are willing volunteers from NGOs to industry who want to help be a part of this solution. However, these good Samaritans, they're held back by concerns of inheriting liability for a mess that they didn't create, and rightly so. Our recent agreement with the EPA and the Forest Service is a path forward for industry and to help be part of the solution. And the agreement allows us to show our commitment to initiate cleanup before any mining begins.
Thank you, Laurel. I think that's a growing trend around the world where developers are open to taking on and assuming past liabilities created by other people in order to help facilitate the permitting their projects, helping the host government solve a problem they have. Okay, now let's broaden the conversation. Gold has had a great 2020, but 2021 has seen a pullback. Silver's starting to come on strong. So why is now a great time to invest in gold and silver juniors? And let me start that one with Darren, please.
Sure. First, I think the first thing is there's been a tremendous pullback in the stocks. So if you're looking to invest, I think we have the same environment we had a year ago pre-COVID. Way too much money, way too much debt in the world, not enough domestic production in countries like ours, a growing need for the minerals and the precious metals. And, I think what you tend to find when we, a bunch of us were in big companies, Phil runs a big company, Hugh was in a big company like I was at Barrick, and they've had 3 or 4 quarters of growing cash flow. And when CEOs and boards get excited about, their growing cash flow, they tend to want to spend it. That's just the way the world works. They never spend it when the price is at the absolute lowest and it's the best opportunity. They spend it when they feel the most confident about their business. So 2 things, I think it's a great time for investors to invest because there's been a massive pullback where guys are more than, companies are more than 50% off their highs, some 60 or 70% off their highs. And we still have a great environment of pricing ahead of us. And then I think the second reason is I think a lot of these projects and a lot of these companies that you're seeing on this screen today, showing Q going from 0 to 3 million, Cal's project, going from nothing 4 years ago to being, going on its way to 10 million ounces. These things will get bought up because the big seniors don't have enough inventory in their stable. They haven't been buying, but they've been getting great free cash flow. And quite frankly, they're getting confident. And I think that's the trigger.
Okay, thank you, Darren. Cal, let me turn the question to you as well, please.
I guess this is a timing question, so I got to come up with a timing answer on this. But for the timing of buying precious metals, the standard answer would be the prices that precious metals pricing has to go higher because of the decline of global production, the lack of replacement ounces, and whatever economic concerns happening around the planet as that changes on a given day. I tend to not want to predict the price of precious metals, but the timing of my purchases of investments in the companies that are present here, because I own a lot of them, is based on margin. Okay, so when you're looking at margin, you want a high grade, high margin investment, and you want a low grade, high margin investment. But nobody should be investing in a high grade, low margin or a low grade, low margin deposit. So all of the companies present in this forum all exhibit good margin. Okay, so that's what drives the interest of the mining companies into taking a look at everybody talking on this forum. So on a timing basis, it's about how much free cash flow can you generate for a producing mining company or for yourself. Because my experience with 25 years in the sell side of the business is if you actually build the mine yourself, you're going to get a higher return for your shareholders than monetizing your company and selling it. It just takes time and patience, as Perpetua has clearly discussed here, to get through the permitting process. But if you've got a great mine, when there's only average product around you, you're going to make a lot of money. And that's why it's the timing of the purchase with regards to the precious metals, but it's also the timing of the stage of discovery of the asset you're looking at.
Thank you, Cal. So building on what you've been saying, Cal, and Darren's comments previously, let's sort of talk a little bit about M&A. Recent months, we've seen consolidation underway in Ontario and Quebec, and yesterday's announcement of Newmont buying GT Gold. I mean, that must have excited you, given that GT Gold is pre-resource, it's gold exploration, and a 38% premium to boot. So how do you see the M&A space unfolding this year? And I'd like to start that with Hugh. Hugh, in a past life, you were part of a business development team of a major gold mining company. So you've very much got the vision that Cal just mentioned about what majors are looking for and how they look at things. How do you see M&A unfolding this year, Hugh?
Look, both Darren and I have served at the top of global gold mining companies and in M&A for much of our careers. And there was a lot that's already been said by Cal. I think some very good points there, and by Darren. But what I would add is some of the soft factors, and it brings it back to Idaho, which is modern mining and exploration is a technically very savvy business. It requires smart people running AI technologies on the geology, sophisticated environmental programs and routines, complicated computer systems for mine scheduling and figuring out the economics. And so large mining organizations are looking for jurisdictions that are not only safe, but have the skilled people, the heritage, the understanding, the young people, the new generation that can take over these remote mining tools, remote sensing, AI technologies, all of these things and the spin-off skills that come from that. And so I would say, that puts Idaho in a spotlight, and the skills that have been developed at Hecla Mining over the years, in universities, in the Idaho Geological Survey, in the governments, I think those are very important to large mining companies. The people aspect of it, the security aspect of it, and it's just one other thing to add on this whole topic about what corporates are looking for. And apart from opportunity, they're also afraid, because the world of responsible places where one can responsibly mine and bring minerals into society is shrinking, and so they're afraid of declining reserves, and there'll be a scramble for the seats on the bus that remain. You bet.
Thank you, Hugh. George, you've successfully, as a gold junior, you've successfully sold a gold project for a lot of money in the past, not too distant past, in fact. Are you starting to get the tingling feet again that transactions are approaching?
I am, and certainly, yesterday's transaction in GT Gold was a testament to that. A project taken over for the sums of money that was taken over in the absence of studies. I think that's a great testament to the start of something. But reflecting back over the 30 years that I've been in the business, 3 gold cycles. Where we're at in this current gold cycle is no different from other cycles. And where we're at, I feel right now is a point where the gold producers have cleaned up their balance sheets. They've gotten rid of debt. They're now, accumulating a lot of cash. As you can see on a quarterly basis, the gold producers have, in some cases, billions of dollars in cash. And so what they typically do at this point in the cycle is they'll dividend that money out. They'll to please shareholders. They'll declare special dividends. They'll buy their stock back. And that typically lasts for about 6 months to a year. And then at some stage, they get itchy trigger fingers. And I know, having worked for a major mining company before, I know when that happens. And all it takes is one. And then that catalyst starts because everybody else needs to buy something as well. And so I think we're pretty close to that point, Paul. Are we 6 months off, a year? Perhaps. But the beauty of this, everybody on this call here who's advancing an advanced asset, none of us need to sell. To Cal's point, there is at times much more value to be created by building the assets. So the beauty of everybody on this call is these are all projects that we have the ability to finance and build, and all of us here on the call. So we have that optionality. We don't have to sit there and wait and hold the for sale sign for the next 5 years. It's not the case for any of us.
Thank you, George. I think one thing that stood out for me about the Newmont GT deal is that Newmont isn't active in British Columbia, so it's very much going into a new jurisdiction. Perhaps the recent deal before that was Agnico Eagle and TMAC, which you could understand because Agnico Eagle's in Nunavut. But it's interesting to see what the logic behind that deal. Let's bring in Phillips as a sort of a bigger producer. What's your view on this M&A space, and what things are getting you, piquing your interest?
Well, we're always looking at things, Paul, but I will tell you that we see with our own portfolio the ability to grow our production dramatically. We would expect to see our Lucky Friday be at 5 million ounces of production in the next 2 years, and potential to grow well beyond that. So you could see about 50% growth. And in the next 10 years, we actually see the ability to see 2 or 3 times the production growth we have with projects we already have in the pipeline. So we're, I'll repeat what Cal said. If you can develop this stuff yourself and you can advance it, you can make better returns for your shareholders than buying assets. That's not to say we won't buy things, but that's not really where our focus is. It's on our own portfolio of assets.
Thank you. Another one of the sort of messages I've been hearing a lot about M&A is, there's a lot of pent up demand out there. And as and when COVID-19 travel restrictions ease off, there's going to be a lot of, corporate executives flying around, kicking the tires on projects, and M&A could and should perhaps pick up. How likely do you think that is? And, what do you think will be the catalyst for those corporate business executives to get out there again? I mean, is it going to be a case that as soon as somebody flies somewhere and makes a deal, the others are really going to start jumping on airplanes again? Who'd like to take that one? Okay, well,
I have no doubt, Paul, they will. And you've seen lots of people blow the brains out over the course of the last 10 years, and you'll see people do the same thing. Hopefully we'll have more discipline in the industry, but that remains to be seen. History is not a very good past history wouldn't suggest that's going to be the case. So
yeah, Phil's correct, because the industry itself in the past has had a kind of a herd mentality, and everybody hedged and then they got caught. So then they unhedged and then they started to overpay for assets in the 2011 cycle. And then they all got caught collectively, and then they get their balance sheets all cleaned up, and now they're giving out dividends collectively. And when I talk to some of the big institutional shareholders of Liberty, they're not really investing in Liberty Gold for stock dividends. They're looking for a growth profile. So when you look at these acquisitions, the cost of an acquisition is the cost of the company plus the CapEx to build that property, okay? And I talk to a lot of producers. And so let's say it's going to cost $300 million all in to take from discovery to development of black pine in southern Idaho. If the cost of the company is X dollars plus that, those companies need to see a repayment of their total investment in 12 months or less to get, and then they want to see a mine life of over 10 years and hopefully 20 years of potential that they can have a district under control, that they're left alone, and they can keep an entire major working staff operating. And that's what the general search is. And I talk to companies from all around the world. This is what they're looking for, but they're never going to leap on a company without an independent resource. And most of them wouldn't leap on a company without an economic study of some sort. So they need, there's 3 boxes you tick: metallurgy, resource, and a PEA, and then they run their own numbers, and then they'll make their decisions. But they just, in the past, they made decisions, I better buy that because I don't want Barrick to own it, or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's where the mistakes were made in the past.
I think it's getting to be an interesting situation. As you mentioned, the producers have been piling cash onto their balance sheet, and there's been a dividend race, so to speak, through the need or desire to attract generous investors. And again, sticking with Newmont, $400 million deal yesterday. Today they announced they're going to redeem $550 million of notes due later this year. All of that within the context of shareholder distributions totaling over $2 billion in the past 2 years, and that the total liabilities in the company are still around $18 billion. So very interesting what's happening there in terms of how they're using the resources they're generating. Okay, we're coming near the end, and so I'd like to sort of give all our panelists 2 minutes again. What are the sort of key catalysts that people can expect from your company this year? And again, let's start with Phillips, please.
The key catalysts are really the growth that we see at the Lucky Friday. That mine produced about 700,000 ounces in 2019. Last year produced 2 million ounces. This year will produce 3.5 million. And by 2023, we'll be at 5 million ounces. So just a tremendous amount of growth. And with that comes a significant amount of free cash flow. But it's not the only place where there's dramatic improvement changes that are happening. We're seeing that at our mine in Quebec, Casa Berardi. We're seeing it at Greens Creek. Greens Creek is a mine that's been around for 30 years. And this past year was, despite not having the best prices, was about the second best year in the history of the mine, certainly the most revenue. And so we're continuing to see how we make those improvements. The other thing that's happening is the exploration program that we have. $30 million of exploration this year. I anticipate that we will probably spend more than that. And it's focused in Nevada. It's focused at San Sebastian, where we've made new discoveries. And we also, though, have a continuing program at Casa Berardi and at Greens Creek. And there's a whole suite of other assets that investors never hear about because of the dominance of these key assets, but you'll see those things advancing. And then I guess the final catalyst that I'll mention really has nothing to do specifically with Hecla. It really has to do with silver and the place that silver has in our economy. What's become very clear to the world is the need to shorten that supply chain, the need to bring the production of the metal back into the United States. And the United States is just incredibly well endowed. And the world needs the silver for that change, that decarbonization of our economy. And, silver is in a place that it has never been before in 5,000 years. It's never had this environment where it has this it's fundamentally required for the advancement of society. And so the outlook for the silver price is just like it's never been before.
Okay, thank you, Phillips. Hugh, please, your catalyst for this year.
Yeah, it's drilling. We've gone from 0 to 3 million ounces. We think there's better than 5 million ounces on the project, and we're going to hit it hard again this year, both in the high grade at Joss, where we got a kilometer of strike with high grades, and also in the oxides at Haiti, where we have a potential expand the mine life, add $30–40 million a year of free cash flow to that project. Meanwhile, we're ticking the boxes on all those de-risking steps that we've talked about earlier are important to building value in these projects, moving towards a production decision by the end of 2022 and our PFS with respect to the first phase heap leach project at Bear-Track Arnett.
Thank you, Hugh. Cal, your catalyst, please.
For this year, it's going to be a busy one. As soon as we get our last few drill holes from the last year's drill program, we'll give those drill results, put them together, and we'll initiate an immediate maiden resource estimate on Black Pine. And that'll cover about a 1.8 square kilometer projected starter pit in terms of dimensions. And we're projecting it could be higher or lower than a couple million ounces in there to start with. And that's 15% of the target. Once that is we have that resource in hand, we'll initiate immediately a PEA, which should take about 4 months to do. And when we're doing the PEA, the drilling that's going to start up in a few weeks, about 40% of that will be infill drilling, converting inferred ounces to indicated ounces to immediately go to a pre-feas, hopefully by October. And then there'll be equivalent of, I guess, when you double shift drills, 7 drills operating on the project with 56,000 meter to 70,000 meter budget. Plus, we'll go out and do our third phase of metallurgy. There's 50 column tests activated right now for mid-year. Then we'll just keep advancing the project, build more ounces, and at the same time, we'll be drilling in southwest Utah on our second oxide gold system, converting inferred to indicated ounces there for a pre-feas decision there. And meanwhile, we still have one residual project in Turkey that we're hopefully close to getting maiden resources on 3 porphyry copper gold and 1 oxide gold and 1 supergene copper deposit. Then I'll start the process of monetizing that and cleaning the company up to be a pure oxide Carlin style high-grade basin company.
Okay, thank you, Cal. George, your catalyst, please.
Thanks, Paul. Well, so we've got about $30 million US to spend on the project this year, and really sort of the 2 hallmarks of what's we expect to happen this year following this dual track. One, obviously the pre-feasibility study that's going to be delivered in the 4th quarter of this year. And what we're guiding on is something that looks like 150 to 200,000 ounces of gold equivalent production versus the 125 that we put out in the PEA a few years back. I think another interesting aspect of the PFS is the PEA study was optimized to recover, really optimized to focus on gold recovery more than silver. But since the time of the production of that PEA, the silver price has risen about 50%. So we're now looking at ways to recover more silver that our investors will see in the pre-feas to come. And then while we're doing all that, we're exploring pretty aggressively on the project. We've got 2 drill rigs in operation now. We're looking to expand to maybe 4 drill rigs by this spring. So we're looking at these options and really focusing in on these areas where we've announced these great discoveries. Black Sheep, for example, I think it largely went unnoticed a couple weeks ago, but hitting those types of wide, low-grade intercepts with intervals of high grade out there on your first drill holes in an area that's 30 square kilometers, that's huge. So that's clearly a discovery. And then areas like Florida Mountain, for example, the high grade underneath Florida Mountain, we'll be hitting those hard and then getting to War Eagle through the summer. So really a dual track between de-risking studies and exploration over the course of the summer, Paul.
Okay, thank you very much, George. Laurel, your catalyst, please.
Well, this year will be a big year for Perpetua. We'll begin early stage cleanup to improve the water quality in the Stibnite Mining District with our agreement with EPA. We also, as we look towards construction and then to operations, we anticipate that we'll set some big ESG commitments this year. And then we anticipate our record of decision by the end of 21.
So a very exciting time for you. And finally, Ben, what are the sort of main initiatives or activities of the IMA this year, or that you're planning this year?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. we are going to continue our efforts on the regulatory and policy front. We've also, with the help of everyone on this call, stepped up our public outreach efforts to educate the public on what modern mining is. We've talked a lot about many of the things on this call. People are looking for regulatory certainty. You're looking for stable governments. You're looking for local support. And at the end of the day, we're all looking for a path forward to permit a mine. Like every other state in the nation, Idaho has its challenges. It takes time to permit projects on federal land, and there's certainly no shortcuts there. But the benefit on the back end of that bureaucratic process is a project that we can all be certain to be able to operate without much interference throughout its life. As far as local support and part of the reasoning, behind some of our outreach efforts, we've got poll after poll telling us that Idahoans believe that mining can be done in an environmentally safe way, and that they don't believe mining and the environment are mutually exclusive. Like any location, we've got a very active and vocal conservation community that's going to they're going to oppose any development, be it mineral development, be it housing. That's not unique to Idaho, and it certainly presents what we feel is a vocal minority in our state. But we all know that mining should not be a partisan issue. We know that mining will have to play a role in many of the partisan goals that are out there. The conservatives want mineral independence for national security and defense, and the liberals, they for the supply chains to increase, their reach for green energy initiatives. So I certainly believe that Idaho can and will play a role in all of these initiatives, and we shouldn't close the door based on it being a political threat or a regulatory threat. So we're going to keep plowing forward on trying to educate the public, and if you guys have any issues on the regulatory front, just tell me how high to jump, and I will.
Thank you, Ben. And finally, Darren, your catalyst, please.
Great, thanks. Well, I think really we have three this year. It's restarting our Mexican operations. We have an agreement finally with the Mexican government to reopen the mine. We just need the Mexican government to do what they say they're going to do. That's been a big issue for us. We've got an area there that's going to produce in the first full year 1 million ounces of silver, but it goes up to about 3 by the end of year 2. So we want to get that up and running. We've got full production at Relief Canyon, hopefully by the end of the second quarter, which is a big catalyst, and the shareholders have been ready. I think the third one is the Galena resource update. Again, we're anticipating, we've told the market we're going to 200 million ounces of silver at the mine. That will likely trigger a new technical report. So those are the three things. And then I think echoing Phil's comments, I don't think anybody's ever been more bullish on silver. And I think that'll, although Cal doesn't like to prognosticate, and I'm always wrong, I feel very comfortable about silver this year and where it's going in its dynamic.
Well, it sounds like there's going to be lots of drill results, lots of studies, and lots for me to write about for Mining Journal. Well, that's all we've got time for today. So many thanks to Phillips, Hugh, Cal, George, Laurel, Darren, and Ben for joining us. And goodbye from me, Paul Harris. Thank you, everybody.